It is the year 3000 AD. And yes, we still need roads. This movie is a sham. Top Gear 3000, released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System from Kemco and Gremlin, is the third and final game in the Top Gear aka Top Racer series to grace the 16-bit platform. And speaking of which, the Top Racer collection was recently released as of this recording, collecting all three Top Gear/Racer games on the SNES under one package, and it's okay. Not much else to say there, it's just okay. But anyway. Top Gear 3000 supposedly takes place in a future far beyond any of our lifetimes, and outside of the spaceships and some exotic scenery, a lot of the future stuff is merely window dressing to steer this third entry past the usual racing fare. On the surface, Top Gear 3000 largely retains the same gameplay as its predecessors. You race a bunch of tracks, try to attain a good finish to earn some credits to spend on upgrades for your vehicle, and generally do well enough to qualify to other circuits and such. Needless to say, if you've played the previous two Top Gear games, this will more or less play the same as those titles, and that's a good thing. Now that being said, Top Gear 3000 does introduce some new gimmicks to the mix, such as these red and blue stripes that you could drive over. The red strips refuels your car, while the blue strips repair your car armor. And there are occasional split paths, either leading to a shortcut or perhaps leading to extra bonuses like extra credit balls you could pick up, which is nice because that means a little extra cash to spend on upgrades to your car, such as faster engines, magnets that attract you to cars for speed boosts, jumping things that let your car jump, and a warp drive. Something to justify the 3000 moniker, I think. Sadly, that fun stuff has to be earned by finishing races, and even then, you'll need to spend a pretty penny to get your hands on those babies. There are two main modes of play. The standard championship mode, which can be played with either one or two players via split screen, and this is where the usual Top Gear action comes into play. But then you also have the versus mode, which can be played with up to 4 players, which means that yes, Top Gear 3000 is one of those rare uncommon games to offer 4-player split-screen action on the Super NES. And you don't even need 4 people to play this. You can even play this solo and race against 3 other computer opponents and a number of tracks. It's actually quite a sight to behold, and it actually works quite nicely. Not great, but still very largely playable for the most part, and such a surreal sight to witness on this sort of hardware. Regardless of the futuristic window dressing or extra gimmicks that attempt to make this a more distinct racer compared to its contemporaries, Top Gear 3000 is more or less the same game underneath the hood. Racing to qualify for the next course, finishing as high of a position as possible to earn more cash, being mindful of fuel and structural integrity, that sort of thing. There's a wide variety of tracks for you to race in, and every couple stages, you'll gain a password to keep track of your progress, which is nice. There's the usual inconsistency in difficulty, biting tooth and nail to finish one track with an empty fuel gauge and nothing but inertia to carry you over to the finish line, only to practically breeze through the next track is a common occurrence in Top Gear, but that's to be expected 3 games into a series. At the very least, Top Gear 3000 boasts solid controls that are slick and responsive, and you could swap button configurations to something more in tune with your playstyle. Visually, Top Gear 3000 looks about as good as the previous 2 games. Cars look fairly nice even if they're all the same model with different colors at most. The scenery is quite nice as well, even if only a few of them take advantage of the futuristic setting like the moon tracks or stuff like that. I do like the intermission where the spaceship is transporting your car to the next planet, which, by the way, only 1 racetrack per planet. I'll try to figure that one out. The racing is nice and fast, perhaps a bit too fast at times, to the point where the frame rate starts to get a bit choppy when you move at really fast speeds, which is admittedly something of a common occurrence with these Top Gear titles, but doesn't really detract from the overall gameplay. Even the 4-player mode doesn't really suffer all that much, aside from the frame rate being inconsistent but not all that bad otherwise. Now, one aspect where Top Gear 3000 falters is in its soundtrack. Both Top Gears 1 and 2 have superb, slick-sounding tunes to serenade your racing ambitions, but Top Gear 3000's musical selections, well, let's just say they're not quite as good as hitting that sweet spot. I wouldn't necessarily call these bad tunes, they sound alright, they're not violating your ears or anything, but after 2 entries of quality chip music that I am not afraid to admit I'll drive to on long road trips, these songs feel like a step backwards. Technical limitations are what I'd imagine is preventing music from playing during the versus mode, leaving you with the fairly adequate but comparatively weak sounding sound effects of the car engines and such. Usually the wheels fall off the wagon by the third entry in a series, but sometimes that third entry continues the high standard established by its predecessors, and Top Gear 3000 certainly falls in that latter category. There are a few additions here and there that makes it a slightly different experience, but the core gameplay ultimately remains the same slick package that it's always been. If you've enjoyed the previous 2 Top Gear games and you've never got a chance to play this one, then definitely give it a whirl. It may be more of the same, but sometimes more of the same just means more of a good thing, and this is a good thing.